Cenk Uygur of TYT gave a speech to the National Press Club, and he basically went at the establishment media directly to their faces. So this is an interesting back and forth. Take a look.
Oh, isn't this a great country where you can come to Washington, welcome to Washington, by the way, and say Washington is toxic?
Yes.
And walk out of this room unharmed?
For now, yes.
Well, let me, as president of the National Press Club, you've taken a lot of swings at the media. I've been a reporter, an editor, worked in journalism. I've been a journalist for almost 25 years. And I got to say that all of the reporters and editors I know work so hard to get it right and work so hard. I work for Bloomberg. And objectivity, not false equivalence, which you have called out here, but objectivity is incredibly important. It is incredibly important to have, to me personally, to have a fair and unbiased standard of reporting, right? And I understand that everybody has an opinion, and you're welcome, obviously, to it, and we welcome you here to state your opinion. But I know you called out Wolf Blitzer at one point as not having a thought. But when Wolf Blitzer was here accepting an award 2 years ago, every single person who came and spoke about him said he was the hardest working man at CNN, that he was such a hardworking reporter. So I just want to recognize here that the reporters and editors who are working for newspapers and TV, all of which are also digital now, right? They work really hard. They're not in it for the money.
Yep. Yeah, Andrea.
They work hard, and they work hard to get it right. So
okay, so let me agree and disagree. So do they work hard? Of course, I don't begrudge them that. No, nowhere in my speech did I say they were lazy. And
I think you did.
No, I think I said they were wrong. That's different than lazy. And so Wolf Blitzer, his problem isn't whether he works hard or doesn't work hard. His problem is he does have a perspective, and he might not even know it. His perspective is the status quo is awesome. So Hillary Clinton is acceptable, Jeb Bush is acceptable, Bernie Sanders is not acceptable, Donald Trump is not acceptable. And so it oozes out of every broadcast.
I don't want to speculate on his perspective.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You, look, let's. No, I can speculate. It's not speculation. I'll tell you what CNN's motives are: profit. It's not complicated. They're a giant, multi-billion-dollar corporation. Why are they in favor of the status quo? Well, they don't want to rock the boat because it's their boat. It's their boat. If you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, you do not want change. You just don't want it. So it's not that they give a memo to Wolf Blitzer, although MSNBC literally told me that my non-establishment thinking was not welcome. But that's unusual. Normally, it is in the hiring decisions. When's the last time CNN hired a radical? You might say, well, of course you're not going to hire a radical. Think about that. Of course you're not going to hire a quote-unquote radical.
I mean, CNN should be in the business of hiring reporters, not politicians, right?
Well, but what is the perspective that they present, Andrea? The perspective is status quo, establishment. It should be the truth, but it isn't. So let me ask you this. Jake Tapper on CNN, and these are not bad guys. I know Jake a tiny bit. I know Chris Cuomo a little bit. Alison Camerota is wonderful. There's a lot of great journalists at the New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera, and they do great stories. Okay, but Jake Tapper goes on air and says Medicare for All costs $32 trillion, but he leaves out that it saves $34 trillion. And he asked Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, how are you going to pay for it? Every time, watch it. I'll tell you ahead of time, not afterwards, not Monday morning quarterback. I'll tell you ahead of time. Every time a progressive goes on air, on CNN or elsewhere, they will ask him, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Wages, higher wages, anything that helps the middle class, how are you going to pay for it? Did they ask him, how are you going to pay for it on a $2 trillion tax cut for the rich? Did they ever ask him, how are you going to pay for the Iraq war that cost us trillions of dollars? No, they bowed their heads.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. New York Times, you saw Judy Miller. They always apologize afterwards, but they never learn their lessons. So how about Iran? Warmongering, fear-mongering on Iran, on Syria too. But everybody constantly feed into it. I've never seen a single question of Syria. How much is that going to cost? Never.
Okay.
That clip was amazing because her attitude is the exact attitude I would expect from somebody deep in the establishment elite media bubble. That's the exact attitude that's like the stereotypical attitude of somebody from within the bubble hearing an accurate theory from somebody outside of that bubble. Because it's smug and it's dismissive and it's almost like she's like looking down at him like, oh, with your childish theories and your broad generalizations, like, don't you know that me and everybody in my club are wonderful people? And we do a fantastic job. That's what we do. But Cenk's right. Now, print media, I think, is better than mainstream media on TV, but they both have giant problems. And the main issue is they hire safe mouthpieces that will back up the narrative of the establishment and the status quo and business as usual. He's correct when he says they don't want Bernie Sanders and they don't want Donald Trump. They don't want anybody that's perceived as an outsider. They don't want anybody who's going to shake stuff up. So they did believe Jeb Bush is okay, Marco Rubio is okay, Hillary Clinton's okay. That's exactly what they believe. That's exactly why right now they're pushing Joe Biden in 2020. We just covered the article from Politico. He's running on an anti-populist message. As if that's like the people are out there like, what do we want? An end to populism. When do we want it? Now. They brag about how Joe Biden wrote a blog post where he came out against universal basic income and he defended corporations. And he says, oh, Bernie Sanders always blaming corporations. That's not the right idea. Am I right about that, guys? And they portray this as if it's like, he represents all of us. No, he represents all of you in that establishment media bubble. That's who he represents. And they don't see it. They genuinely don't see it. To go with the Wolf Blitzer example, Wolf Blitzer had Rand Paul on his show one time. Rand Paul said, hey, I'm proposing this piece of legislation that stops us from arming Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia is currently doing a genocide in Yemen. They're killing women. They're killing children. They're bombing hospitals and schools and open-air markets and mosques, and we need to put a stop to that. And Wolf Blitzer's response, I kid you not, was, what about the profits of the defense contractors? What about the jobs that are tied to the defense contractors? Wolf Blitzer was hired because the people that hired him knew he's not that bright and knew that that would be the kind of response he would give. They wouldn't hire a guy like me who would go on to agree with Rand Paul and say, you know what, you're right, and there's a genocide going on over there, and we're partly responsible for that genocide, which is why we need to put an end to it. And it's crazy that we pretend to care about human rights while at the same time we're arming and backing a regime that's committing a genocide, and we're actively helping them in that process. We shouldn't be able to say a goddamn word about human rights until we clean up our own act and clean up our own mess and stop arming Saudi Arabia and stop arming jihadis in Yemen and Syria and stop arming Israel with their permanent occupation and apartheid. They would never hire a guy like me because that's what I would say. I would tell the truth. And the truth does not paint the U.S. in a very rosy picture. When was the last time you heard somebody in the establishment media quote accurate polling where they talked to thousands of people all around the world? And the response was, the United States is the biggest threat to world peace. It wasn't North Korea. It wasn't Russia. It wasn't Iran. It wasn't Pakistan or India. It was the United States that was overwhelmingly ranked by people around the world as the biggest threat to world peace. When was the last time you heard CNN or MSNBC or even the Washington Post? When was the last time you heard them discuss that fact? They don't discuss that fact. Why? Because they do have an ideology. Their ideology is the status quo. Pro-establishment, pro-elites. Read Manufacturing Consent. They are not going to rock the boat. They are going to do the bidding of the people in power. Because guess what? The people in power, it's them. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, or he gave a tremendous amount of money to the Washington Post. He's worth over $100 billion. Is he going to come out in support of Bernie Sanders, even though Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in the country by a mile and a half? Is he going to say, yeah, I'm with that guy? No, they're going to do fucking hatchet jobs against Bernie all day long because he threatens money and power. He threatens the status quo. Well, when the media is made up of those same people with money and power, obviously they're not going to back the anti-establishment candidates, the populist candidates, and they're going to try to destroy their chances at winning. It's obvious. Look at what happened with the Syria coverage. Now, the establishment wants the U.S. to be more involved in Syria. Why? There's a lot of money to be made. A lot of money to be made for the military-industrial complex. The more we're involved in foreign wars. So why did you see, like, Brian Williams talk about the beauty of our weapons. Why did you see Fareed Zakaria go out there and say, this is the day Donald Trump became president? Now, it's not a smoke-filled backroom conspiracy. The conspiracy is out in the open. They're going to hire people who will back their narrative and their ideology, and that ideology is pro-establishment, pro-status quo, pro-business as usual, pro-capital, pro-elitists. That's the philosophy. And the reaction to that theory only further proves the point. The point is they hire safe mouthpieces who will give the exact reaction that she gave to Cenk when Cenk accurately pointed that out. Bernie Sanders is the most liked politician in America right now. How many establishment media pieces have you seen getting people ready for Bernie's 2020 run, where they talk about, oh, he's so popular, he's selling out stadiums all over the place, his policy agenda polls overwhelmingly well. Here, look at the numbers. 70% for his Medicare for All bill, 58% for his free college bill, 58% for raising taxes on the rich. When was the last time you saw an excited piece in mainstream media about Bernie Sanders, who's the most liked politician in the country, running in 2020? You haven't seen it. But we have seen it about Joe Biden. We have seen it about Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. Literally, we've seen it about them. How do you explain that? You explain it by pointing out that the media hires safe mouthpieces for the establishment. So, and again, Cenk's right that they don't even realize they're doing it. But that reaction was golden because it further proves the point. So I hope all of you know what this means. This means that all of us need to work even harder to circumvent mainstream media. Now, they're hated, mainstream media. But when you tally together all the views that they do get more views than we do. So we need to find a way to... Now, we're liked, but we do have a smaller audience. So we need to expand our audience and get the word out there and let everybody know that when you want real news and information and you want real discussion about the policy substance that impacts your life, this is where you come. You come to new media and you use social media and you go around the gatekeepers, because that's what they are. They're gatekeepers. And they're never going to tell you the truth, and they're always going to try to stab your candidates in the back. And it was quite a thing to witness, to watch this pointed out directly to one of their smug faces, the establishment media's smug face. And look at how indignant they were in response. That really does say something.